Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Well, it's fall again, so I'm bringing back the Spooky Spiral series, and we're doing Spooky Spiral number 17. You can find the other spooky spirals I've made, number 1 through 16, out on my YouTube channel. So to begin, I'm going to go ahead and spiral the shirt, and to do that, I'm going to use a pair of locking tweezers, and these tweezers have the ends of them coated, so they're not going to damage the fabric. I purchased these from Amazon, and I'll leave a link down below this video in the description. Then over the top of the locking tweezers, I'm going to place a microwavable splatter guard, and I'm placing the flat side of the splatter guard down against the shirt. My splatter guard has a hole in the middle, so I'm placing that hole right over the top of those tweezers. And then as I'm turning the tweezers one direction, I'm using my other hand to make some additional folds in the shirt. Placing the flat side of the microwavable splatter guard over the top helps to keep all of the folds relatively the same size. And for this shirt, I have the front side of the shirt flat against the table because the folds that are against the table are the ones that are the cleanest and the prettiest. So I want that side to be the nicest because that's where I'm going to apply the dye. So initially I thought I would go ahead and use some rubber bands on this shirt to hold the folds together. And once I placed the first rubber band on there and I saw how it kind of started to squish the shirt, I decided against that. I decided instead that I was going to use some painter's tape and just wrap it around the edge of the shirt. So that's what I did. I grabbed a roll of painter's tape, put it on one little part of the shirt that's sticking out, and then wrapped the painter's tape around the outside edge of the shirt. As I did that, I went ahead and put the splatter guard back on so that I could push down on the shirt and kind of hold all the folds together. I placed several batches of tape around the outside of this shirt to hold everything together. I'm not really comfortable lifting this shirt up off of the table, so I just kind of slid it off the edge of the table and onto a metal rack. Then I went ahead and placed the shirt aside because I was tying a few other shirts, and by the time I came back to actually apply the dye to it, it was dry. It doesn't need to be though. You can apply the dye to this shirt when it's damp. So since I'm doing a spooky spiral, when I think of spooky, I think of orange, lime green, purple, and black. So those are kind of the colors that I'm going to use for this shirt, but I'm going to use a variety of those colors. Right now, I have the back side of the shirt up on the gray metal rack. So to turn it where I have the front side up, I'm going to grab another metal rack, place it on top, and then just flip the shirt upside down. Then I'm going to place my metal rack down inside of a plastic tote. And even though I have the tape around the outside edge, I need to make myself an ice barrier because I am going to ice dye this shirt. So to do that, I'm going to use some silicone cake molds, which I'm going to attach together, and then I'm going to wrap them around the outside of the shirt and hold them together with a wooden clothespin. Then before I begin applying the dye, I'm going to use a washable marker and divide my shirt into 4 sections. I'm going to take each one of the lines through the middle or the center of the spiral. That is going to make all the colors originate from the center of that spiral. So in general, the 4 colors that I've chosen to use on this shirt don't necessarily blend well together. I've chosen to use a combination of oranges, lime greens, purples, and grays and blacks. The grays and blacks go with everything, so that's not a problem. But orange doesn't blend well with green, green doesn't blend well with purple, and purple doesn't blend well with orange. When you mix any combination of those colors together, you are probably going to get some brown, which I don't necessarily want on this shirt. So I'm going to start by using Raven from Dharma Trading Company, and I'm going to place the Raven right on those lines that I drew on the shirt to divide the 4 sections. That will help separate the colors just a little bit, and hopefully avoid some of that color blending. So in the first section that I'm going to apply the dye, I'm going to use the orange colors. And when I apply the dye, I'm going to go right along the black lines that I initially put on the shirt. So I'm going to apply each dye color kind of in a V shape. I'm starting with Rust Orange from Dharma Trading Company, and I think that is now a special order color. And you can still purchase those from Dharma, but you have to buy larger quantities. If you don't want to buy a large quantity of that color, you can usually find it at in a Facebook group called Tie-Dye Supplies Marketplace. I have a link to that group down below this video in the description. People out there buy the dyes or the special dyes in large quantities, then they repackage them down into smaller quantities to sell. So the first color was Rust Orange, followed by Tangerine and Deep Orange, which are both Dharma colors, Dusty Orange and Pumpkin Spice, which are both Pro Chemical and dye colors. And in the very last little section, it's going to be more of like a triangle than a V shape. And if you want to use more or less colors, feel free to do that. Just, accommodate by making your lines wider or thinner when you apply the dye. So the next section is going to be the lime green. I'm starting with Lime Pop, followed by Lime Squeeze, which are both Dharma Trading Company colors. Then I'm using Margarita and Key Lime, which are both dye spin colors. And the last color is going to be Ecto Green from Pro Chemical and Dye. These greens are they're all lime greens. Part of them are more yellowish than others though, so I'm trying to alternate, do a more yellow lime followed by a more bluey or green type lime, and so on, so that the colors don't just totally blend together. The next section is going to be purples, and for the purples I've only chosen 4 colors. I'm using Royal Purple from Dye Spin, followed by True Violet and True Purple from Grateful Dyes, and Deep Purple from Dharma Trading Company. So the purple lines are going to be a little bit wider than the orange and the lime colors. Lastly, I'm going to apply the gray and black dye. So I'm starting with Charcoal Gray from Dharma, and then I'm going to place another line of Raven from Dharma Trading Company, followed by Gunmetal Gray, Black, and Brushed Steel. These are all Dharma colors in the gray and black section, and the black is actually another one of the special order colors. I think the dye ends up looking really cool on a design like this once you have it all applied to the top of the shirt. Then over the top of the dye, I'm going to place an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash, followed by a pretty thick layer of ice. I placed the shirt aside and I allowed the ice to melt. And after this first layer of ice melted, I came back and I had quite a bit of undissolved dye left on top of the shirt. So I went ahead and added a second layer of ice to the top. Then after that second layer of ice melted, I left the shirt alone and allowed it to process for about 48 hours before I began rinsing it. To rinse the shirt, I took it to my utility sink and I began rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. Then I warmed the water up to hot and continued rinsing in hot water to try to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. I went ahead and took the tape away from the outside edge of the shirt and went ahead and allowed the shirt to open up and continued rinsing just a little bit more before I decided to soak the shirt. To soak the shirt, I placed it in my utility sink along with some really hot water and a little bit of Blue Dawn dish soap. When the water would cool off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I placed the shirt along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent into my washing machine and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so the shirt's been washed, dried, and ironed, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? So I think this one looks cool. One thing I was a little disappointed with is I don't think my Raven Black is really all that dark. I know that all blacks split, at least all the Dharma blacks that I've used split. So the fact that the black split didn't surprise me, but it doesn't really look super dark. Like when I look at the front of the shirt in between the orange and the green, I really can't hardly see any line in between those two colors, just a little bit of one. But I am really happy with the way the shirt turned out. You know, the colors didn't mix and form brown, so I'm very happy with that. And I like all the cool color splits. I like the way the colors kind of mesh together. It gives dimension to the different, like the green and the orange and the purple and gray areas. I think adding all those colors in with the color splits and the different shades gives a lot of dimension to that part of the swirl or the spiral. So overall, I think it looks really cool. It does definitely give me Halloween or spooky spiral vibes, but what do you guys think? Do you like it? Does this look like a Halloween shirt to you? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching and I hope you have a great day.